This maid knew something the entire high society in New York would pay millions to bury. She knew that socialite Beatrice Hastings had switched her identity, and that billionaire Oliver Hastings' marriage was a complete sham. But why would she risk everything, her job, her life, even deportation, to sneak into the forbidden office? What was she looking for in the diary? The answer is a $50 million lie that cost a life and uncovered a hidden heir. Oliver Hastings was not a man who followed the clock. He was the clock. As CEO of one of Wall Street's most dominant firms, his life was a meticulously planned sequence of power moves, black cars, and nine-figure deals. But ever since the helicopter crash, the one that stole his beautiful socialite wife, Beatrice, Oliver's routine had warped into something cold and obsessive. He was a Manhattan widower, living inside a $50 million duplex on the 57th Street, but surrounded only by silence and expensive ghosting. That Tuesday, the silence broke him early. At 6 p.m., 2 hours before his chauffeur expected him, Oliver dismissed the car 2 blocks from his building. He needed air, not his usual air-conditioned bubble. The moment he stepped inside the penthouse, the atmosphere was wrong. The air was thick, not with the usual scent of polish and lilies, but with something warm and unexpected, a hint of vanilla and anxiety. Oliver moved through the marble hallways like a predator. He wore a custom suit, but beneath the tailored perfection, he was raw grief, looking for a distraction. He found it near the forbidden room, Beatrice's private study. The room was off limits to everyone, a shrine to a memory he couldn't let go of. But tonight, a faint, almost musical sound was coming from inside. It wasn't the sound of cleaning. It was a soft, feminine sigh. Oliver paused at the mahogany archway. He didn't need to see the cleaning crew roster to know who was in there. It had to be Clara, the new maid. She was quiet, efficient, and almost invisible, a shadow with soft brown eyes and a dangerous ability to blend into the background. She was the one woman in the house who didn't look at him with pity, only with a distant, professional sadness that Oliver found strangely alluring. And now, she was doing the one thing that was strictly forbidden. Clara was perched on Beatrice's leather chair, the glow of the desk lamp casting an intimate, soft light over her face. She wasn't holding a duster. She was cradling the red leather diary, the one Oliver had hidden in the locked drawer. The diary was a final piece of Beatrice, a sacred object, now being touched by unauthorized hands. Oliver watched, his breath catching in his throat. He saw the gentle curve of Clara's neck, the way her inexpensive cotton uniform stretched as she leaned in. It wasn't just an invasion of privacy. It was an intimate betrayal. He was ready to unleash the icy fury of a man who commanded billions, ready to fire her on the spot and ruin her career. But then, Clara made a tiny, fatal mistake. She closed the diary, letting out a lingering, almost mournful sound. And in her other hand, Oliver saw the truth begin to unfold. It wasn't a pen. It wasn't a credit card. It was a creased, faded photograph. A picture that didn't belong in the penthouse, or in the life he thought he knew. A picture of Beatrice, dressed simply, smiling genuinely, holding the hand of a woman who looked exactly like Clara. And between them, a baby. The billionaire's cold rage instantly vaporized, replaced by a seismic jolt of disbelief. He had caught the maid. All right, but what he saw had nothing to do with cleaning, and everything to do with a secret that was about to change the entire power structure of Manhattan. Oliver finally stepped into the room. His shadow fell across Clara, like a curtain dropping on a stage. Clara. His voice was a low, dangerous whisper that promised both punishment and confession. What are you doing? Clara froze. The sudden presence of Oliver Hastings, a man who normally existed in a sphere far beyond her reach, was terrifying enough. But the way he stood, not in the stance of an angry boss, but a man stripped bare of his defenses, made her heart hammer against her ribs. Clara. His voice echoed the silent fury of the penthouse itself. What are you doing? The question was simple, but the implication was devastating. Clara's glove-covered hand instinctively crumpled the photograph. Her eyes, usually so guarded and professional, now held a deep, fearful plea. She knew there was no cleaning excuse, no rational lie that would work. She was caught red-handed with the most sacred relic of his late wife. Mr. Hastings, I apologize. I shouldn't have come in here. I was just... She trailed off, unable to form the lie. The sweet vanilla scent, perhaps her own perfume, now felt suffocating in the tense, sterile atmosphere of the office. Oliver didn't move. He didn't raise his voice. He just pointed a rigid finger at the crumpled paper in her hand. The diary and the photograph. Give them to me. Clara slowly unfolded her hand, revealing the aged paper. The moment she did, Oliver's gaze locked onto the image, and the last fragments of the powerful CEO began to crumble. The picture was old, slightly blurry, a sun-drenched memory from years past. It showed two young women, perhaps in their early 20s, side by side. One was Beatrice, clearly recognizable by the sharpness of her eyes, but dressed in faded jeans and a simple t-shirt, not the diamonds he remembered. She was holding a cooing infant. The other woman, her arm affectionately around Beatrice's shoulder, was undeniably Clara. Her hair was longer, her smile was wider, and she was radiating a youthful warmth Oliver had never seen. But it was the baby that made Oliver's blood run cold. Who is that child, Clara? And why is my wife holding him? His voice now held a raw, primal edge, the sound of a man who suddenly realized he was a stranger in his own marriage. Clara clutched the photo tighter, pulling it protectively to her chest. He is my son, Elias. He is 14 years old now, Mr. Hastings. Oliver took a threatening step forward, looming over her. The silence of Manhattan outside the reinforced windows seemed to mock the chaos exploding in his head. You're telling me that for all the years I was married to Beatrice, you, my maid, were somehow connected to her? That she knew your son? That she was smiling at him like that? His eyes were glacial, demanding the truth about the intimacy he had just witnessed in the photo. Clara met his gaze, finally letting the facade of the invisible Maid drop. Her professional fear was replaced by a fierce, desperate loyalty. I told you, Mr. Hastings, I cannot explain without telling you everything. She gestured toward the red leather diary, lying open on the desk. The reason I risked everything to come into this room, the reason I am holding this photograph, because Beatrice wanted you to know the truth. And the truth, sir, starts not with your wife, but with my sister. Oliver felt the foundation of his perfect, morning world begin to shake. Sister? Beatrice never had a sister. The image of his late wife, the impeccable society queen, was a carefully crafted illusion. Don't call her your sister, Oliver spat, reaching for the diary. You are her employee. She was a Remington. Clara shook her head, tears finally gathering in her eyes. No, she was a Cabrera first. And that is the secret that the city swallowed whole. Oliver's hand paused inches from the diary. The word Cabrera, Clara's last name, the name on her employment file, echoed in the vast, polished silence of the penthouse. You're calling my wife a liar. Oliver's voice was low, strained with disbelief. Beatrice was adopted by the Remingtons. The adoption papers were flawless. Her entire life was flawless. Clara shook her head, the movement tight and full of pain. Flawless to New York, Mr. Hastings, not to the Queen streets where we grew up. She finally lowered the photograph, her gaze softening as she looked at the young woman in the picture, the Beatrice that existed before the millions. We met at the St. Jude's orphanage when we were 8. We weren't sisters by blood, but by survival. I was Clara. She was Bea, Clara explained, her voice gaining a quiet, undeniable strength. Bea was clever, beautiful, and absolutely determined to escape. When the Remingtons showed up rich, old money, looking for a society-ready daughter, Bea saw her chance. She erased everything, the name, the orphanage, the childhood. She became Beatrice Remington. The air in the office grew heavy, thick with the weight of this massive, 15-year deception. Oliver felt a dizzying sense of displacement. His memories of their lavish wedding, the society dinners, the effortless grace of his wife, were all built on a calculated, thrilling lie. And you? Oliver asked, his eyes narrowing, trying to find a con artist in the Maid. What did you get out of the secret? Why are you here, cleaning my floors? Clara stepped back, hurt flashing across her face, but she held her ground. I got her promise. When the Remingtons finalized the adoption, They paid a large sum to silence the past. Bea used that money, her entire inheritance, to fund her escape, but she didn't forget me. She used the rest to keep St. Jude's afloat, and later, she used it to stay connected. Connected how, Clara? Clara looked at the photo, touching the image of her younger self and the baby. Beatrice couldn't bring me with her. Her new family would never allow it, but she always checked in. We communicated in secret. We had to, because after I left St. Jude's, I had Elias. And when I couldn't provide for him, when I was at my absolute lowest. Clara swallowed hard, her eyes clouding with emotion. Beatrice stepped in, not as a billionaire's wife, but as my sister. She told me she had a plan to make sure Elias would never want for anything. She told me about the diary, and she told me that for her plan to work, I had to be close. You took this job. Oliver whispered, his mind racing, connecting the dots. You took this job because of Beatrice. She got me in, Mr. Hastings. She said she was working on the final step, a final transfer of everything. Before her family could stop her, she was preparing to confess everything to you. But she needed time to make sure Elias was safe. This job was the only way for me to protect my son and stay close to the woman who was helping us both. Clara finally looked at the diary, a mixture of love and fear in her gaze. The day she died, she had scheduled a meeting with her lawyer, not mine. It was about adoption papers. Our son, and everything she couldn't say out loud is in those final pages. That's why I risked coming in here. I needed to know if her plan died with her. The mystery of the Forbidden Office had been solved, but far more dangerous question had just opened. Was Beatrice's death truly an accident? Oliver's hands tightened into fists, no longer worried about the maid's betrayal, but about the conspiracy that now engulfed his past, his fortune, and his future. Oliver was reeling. His wife, the woman he'd mourned for 18 months, was a ghost of a lie. His entire social sphere, his mother-in-law's pity, the entire narrative of their flawless high society romance was a farce. And the key to the truth lay in the red leather diary, now resting innocently on the mahogany desk. He looked at Clara. The fear was still there, but beneath it was a desperate plea for justice. You're telling me that this diary contains secrets that could dismantle my family's reputation and explain my wife's true intentions? Oliver asked, his voice low and dangerous. It contains the truth of why she chose me to take this job, Mr. Hastings, Clara said softly, her hands folded in front of her. It explains the money, the secrets, and why she was so terrified in the weeks before the accident. Oliver's professional instincts, the very skills that made him a billionaire, kicked in. He was used to dealing with high stakes, calculated risk, and massive information leaks. This was the biggest exposure of his life. If Clara was telling the truth, the world, his rivals, and the media could tear his empire apart. He reached out, his fingers brushing the cool leather of the diary. You said it was for you. Oliver challenged, testing her loyalty. Beatrice left it for you. Why show it to me? Clara met his intense gaze, her chin lifting slightly. Because the truth is in those pages. But the power to act on it, that belongs only to a man like you, Mr. Hastings. And to protect Elias, I need you to understand what Beatrice sacrificed. Her words cut through his skepticism. The maid was challenging the billionaire. She wasn't asking for money. She was demanding a shared burden and justice for his dead wife. Oliver looked at the photograph one last time. Beatrice, happy, human, holding Clara's baby. He realized that the woman in the picture was the one he truly missed, not the cold icon of Manhattan society. He took a deep breath, the decision hanging heavy in the air. He didn't want to read it. He knew that once those secrets were absorbed, there was no going back to the blissfully ignorant life he had before. He was about to choose between a comforting lie and a devastating, life-altering truth. With a definitive, chilling resolve, Oliver seized the diary. The binding creaked under his grip. He bypassed the elegant, meaningless entries about charity balls and foundation meetings. He flipped directly to the last page, the one Clara had pointed to. I'm reading it. Clara, if this is a lie, I will ruin you. If it's the truth, everything changes. For both of us. Clara took a nervous step back, her breath catching in her throat. She had played her final card. Now, the destiny of her son, the memory of her sister, and the entire fortune of Oliver Hastings rested on the cold, shocking words scrawled in Beatrice's final, desperate entry. The silent reading began. The quiet was deafening. Oliver Hastings, the financial titan, stood frozen, the red-letter diary gripping his hands, as his eyes devoured Beatrice's frantic, final entry. The words were not the elegant socialite script he knew, but a scrawled, desperate confession. Beatrice hadn't just used the diary to lie to him. She used it to confess the truth about their life, her death, and the child. The first paragraphs were a dizzying blur of pain, her lifelong secret of infertility, the immense pressure from Oliver's powerful family to produce an heir, and the resulting panic that had driven her to a radical, dangerous solution. Oliver, I failed you. I failed to be honest. The dope money, the millions the Remington supposedly gave me, it didn't go into our trust. It went to a private clinic in San Francisco to pay for silence and forgery. The air in the room seemed to compress, squeezing the oxygen out of Oliver's lungs. He read the next lines, and the marble floor beneath his custom loafers suddenly felt unstable. I used that money to secretly finance the adoption of a baby, but not just any baby. I used it to take Clara's son, Elias. I was desperate to save him from the hardship I knew she faced in the city. I was his godmother, his surrogate mother. I made an agreement with Clara. I would raise him as my own, giving him the future he deserved, and she would remain close as our maid. I knew you needed an heir, but I needed him to be family. Oliver staggered back against the cold, mahogany desk. Elias, the baby in the photo, the son of the maid, his wife's last desperate act of love and deception. His mind was screaming the question, was his only remaining legacy a lie? But the next words were not about Elias. They were about death. My plan was to tell you everything this week, Oliver. I was going to finalize the legal adoption with Clara and tell you about our little Elias. But someone knew, someone in your own inner circle. They didn't want the son of an immigrant maid inheriting the Hastings fortune. They wanted control. Oliver's vision narrowed, focusing only on the stark, terrifying accusation. The accident, Oliver, it was an accident. I saw the pilot's message. I saw the maintenance logs. Your cousin and business partner, Eleanor Hastings, she's been shifting money. She's been making calls. She's the one who stands to gain if we have no true heir. She needed me gone. She needed Elias out of the way. She murdered me, and she will come for Clara next. The diary slipped from Oliver's grasp, hitting the expensive hardwood floor with a dull, echoing thud. Oliver Hastings, the man who controlled empires, had been completely blind. The perfect, elegant life he mourned was a tapestry of lies woven to hide a painful secret. The accident was an execution. His wife was a hero of survival, and the only person left to protect her legacy and his new family was the very maid he had intended to fire moments ago. He lifted his head, his eyes burning with a sudden, devastating clarity. The cold grief was gone, replaced by a terrifying, unstoppable resolve. He was not a widower. He was a victim, a father, and a target. And the fight to protect Elias, the true heir to the Hastings name, had just begun. The red diary lay accusingly on the polished desk, a silenced witness to murder and betrayal. Oliver didn't move for what felt like an eternity. He was no longer the ruthless CEO of Hastings Capital. He was a man who had just seen his entire identity dissolve. His marriage, his grief, the very foundation of his life in Manhattan, all exposed as a perfect, gilded deception. He looked at Clara. He had wanted to fire her for theft moments ago. Now he saw the last piece of truth his wife had left behind, the only guardian of his future. The fear of being ruined by scandal was momentarily eclipsed by a blinding surge of paternal instinct and rage. Eleanor. Oliver hissed the name of his cousin and business partner, a woman he had trusted with his finances and his grief. The thought of her calculating smile, her feigned sympathy during Beatrice's funeral, was a bitter, suffocating venom. She had profited from his pain and planned the death of the woman he loved. Clara stepped toward him cautiously, her eyes reflecting the chaos in his own. Mr. Hastings, Elias, he knows nothing of this. He only knows that I work here. He is a good boy. He's all that's left of her. Oliver finally moved, pushing himself away from the desk. He walked toward Clara, not with anger, but with a terrifying stillness. He reached out, not to touch her, but to gently pick up the faded photograph on the floor. He focused on the infant's face, a small, innocent mirror of his own devastation. Beatrice loved this boy enough to lie to me for years. Enough to risk everything to keep him close, Oliver murmured, his voice husky. She didn't die for a foundation or a charity ball. She died for him. He turned, the powerful Oliver Hastings resurfacing, but tempered by this new, dangerous truth. His eyes locked with Clara's. This was the true test of character. He had to choose between denying the lie and protecting the life it created. Clara, he said, his voice now firm, authoritative, but carrying a new, shared weight. You came here to find out if her plan died with her. The answer is no. It just changed hands. He placed the photograph carefully back on the desk. Elias is your son. But according to Beatrice's final wishes, and what is now my final word, he is the only heir to the Hastings fortune. I am going to finish the adoption papers. I'm going to do what Beatrice couldn't. Clara stared at him, tears streaming down her face, a mixture of profound relief and overwhelming fear. But Eleanor, she will know. She controls the board. She's powerful. Oliver's expression hardened into the glacial mask of Wall Street. The grieving widower was officially dead. Then she made a critical error, Oliver stated, picking up a cell phone. She thought she was getting rid of a naive socialite and her sister. She didn't realize she was awakening the man who built this empire. The phone was pressed to his ear. He looked directly at Clara, a signal of their new, terrifying partnership. The game of grief was over. The game of revenge and legacy was about to begin. The phone was pressed to Oliver's ear. He hadn't called the police or a crisis management team. He had called Cromwell, his top litigation attorney, a man known for destroying empires, not building them. Oliver's voice was the embodiment of Wall Street ruthlessness. Cold, efficient, and lethal. Cromwell, cancel all appointments. We have a new priority. I need you to open a full investigation into the maintenance records and flight logs of the helicopter accident 18 months ago. Focus on any financial transactions involving Eleanor Hastings in the week preceding Thanksgiving. He paused, listening to the stunned silence on the other end of the line, then delivered the final, non-negotiable command. And prepare the adoption papers. Full custody. The boy's name is Elias. He is the son of Clara, my new partner in this matter. Wire $5 million immediately to Clara's account. This isn't a gift, Cromwell. It's protection. Do not question this, just execute it. He ended the call, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the vast office. Oliver looked at Clara, and a terrifying new reality settled between them. They were no longer the employer and the employee. They were co-conspirators in a high-stakes battle for truth, legacy, and revenge. Eleanor will move fast once she realizes the diary is gone, Oliver stated, his eyes reflecting the steely glare of the city lights. She thought she was clearing a path for herself by taking Beatrice out. She assumed my grief would make me weak. Clara, who had finally stopped crying, nodded, a new strength hardening her delicate features. She had risked everything for this moment. She thinks she controls the narrative. She thinks I'm just a maid. Then we will use that, Oliver said, a faint, predatory smile touching his lips. You will stay here. Elias will join us. This penthouse is no longer a monument to my loss. Clara, it is the war room. Eleanor will see the adoption papers, and she will panic. That's when we strike. Oliver reached out and gently took Clara's hand, a powerful, unspoken pact forming between the billionaire and the sister. It wasn't romance. It was a desperate, mutual loyalty forged in the fires of lies and murder. Beatrice died trying to protect Elias and expose the truth, Oliver whispered, his eyes fixed on forbidden diary. We are going to make sure she didn't die in vain. He was back, not the mourning widower, but the ruthless architect of finance. Only now, his motivation was not money, but justice of the woman he loved and legacy for the son he never knew he had. The battle for the Hastings fortune and the soul of the family was about to tear through the elite silence of Manhattan. Eleanor Hastings had played the game to win an inheritance. Oliver Hastings was about to play it to win a family. Billionaire Oliver Hastings and the maid Clara have ignited the war, but cousin Eleanor still holds control. She believes she's won the battle, yet she doesn't know that her accident created the heir she feared most. What will happen when Eleanor discovers that Beatrice's diary revealed the murder and that her greatest rival is now in love with the heir's mother? This story is far from over. The revenge of New York is just beginning. If you want to follow every twist in this epic battle for the Hastings fortune, subscribe to the channel Stories That Mark and leave a comment. Where in the world are you watching this shocking story from? Your engagement is our strength. See you in the next video.